Welcome to the Johnny Dell Football Academy podcast on the channel that's trying to answer the whys and hows of the game by talking through and dissecting game film and diving deeper to explain why the X's zig and the O's zag. I am Adam Marino, joined by Mr. Johnny Dell, and we are reminding you, as always, the most fun way to watch is on YouTube, where we go live. There you can comment into the live show. Be sure to hit the notification bell and turn on your notifications so you can be a part of the conversation. We also stream live on Facebook and X. Also, the audio versions are always found on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Now, if you are live with us in the chat, it's probably because you are subscribed, you've hit the notification bell, and turned those notifications on. So, when sharing with your friends, be sure to let them know. We also love to hear from you outside of our live show. Email us at jonnydelsfootballacademy@gmail.com, and you can always check out the website jfa49.com, as it is the most fun way to support the channel. Also, the way we boost the chat and boost the algorithm is to type out hashtag JD49. Welcome in to the first Monday of the NFL offseason. It is the Johnny Dell Football Academy podcast. And first I want to say, Terry Byrne checking in asks, how come the NFL doesn't play the Super Bowl game on Saturday? This way, almost everyone can enjoy it without having to call in sick or have to take the day off. The age-old question, yes. I don't know, man. I would be down in December as it gets closer to Christmas. The NFL always adds a few games on a Saturday. We know that Wild Card Weekend, there's games on Saturday. Would it make sense, do you think, Johnny, to ever have the Super Bowl on Saturday?
Next year, yes, and the reason why is because the NFL is trying to reach out to more of the women folk to become fans of the game. We saw that effort with Taylor Swift being everywhere the last few years. I will say, next year, the Super Bowl, I believe, is being slotted for Valentine's Day. It's going to be even later next year. And so, to avoid conflict of interest and many men sitting here saying, I'm sorry, honey, we are not going out for Valentine's Day, that the NFL should proactively move it to Saturday. Now, I don't know. I mean, there are some traditions like I'm just tired of the NFL messing with, and one of it being Super Bowl Sunday. I think the biggest reason that you tend to see the Super Bowl on a Sunday is one, it has become the de facto extra American holiday, and so people have a lot of preparation. I mean, there's if you're gonna get some yard work done, you want to do that before the Super Bowl. It's kind of like getting all your homework done on Friday night, as Wayne's World said. It's like when you get home and you do all your homework really fast, so you have all weekend to party. Is that you get your homework done so that you have all day Sunday to party and it be the pageantry of the Super Bowl. It would just feel weird moving it to a Saturday. I do think what we should do, mandatory late start for work and school the next day. That just makes sense. People need time to rehydrate after all the different diuretics that are being consumed on Super Bowl Sunday. So it would just make sense for the good of public health to at least have a 2-hour late start.
Yeah. Speaking of public health, the public health we need, for my own public health, I'm licking my chops here. I need a official Johnny Dell claps back on X, because it's going down. If you do not follow Johnny Dell on X, Twitter, whatever you would like to call it, be sure that you are doing that. because that's where I love when some of your tweets or whatever they're called, when they
Posts.
go, yeah, when they go viral, or when Kurt Warner retweets it, or Richard Sherman, likes it, or I just love seeing that type of stuff, because that's how legit you are in your knowledge. But yeah, tell us how the clapback can begin.
Uh, so I'm kind of getting a lot of pushback for a post I put up last night. So I'll read it so those in here can see it. It's on my X. I said, some of y'all need perspective. Yes, the Seahawks deserve their flowers. This was also one of the weaker years of NFL teams. The 2023 49ers win the Super Bowl this year. The 2019 49ers win the Super Bowl in this year. A healthy and non-BA flame out 49ers is a much tougher matchup for the Seahawks. Just look at week 1. Some people are acting like Seattle built something 10 times what the 49ers ever have been able to, is being a prisoner of the moment. And that was my feeling, because it seemed like, oh my gosh, Seattle is so far ahead, and see, this is why John Lynch needs to be fired. This is why Kyle Shanahan needs to be on the hot seat. And it just seems like a lot of angst, because a team in the division, and what has been a division rival, um was won the Super Bowl in our house. And so I've gotten a lot of Seahawks fans in here. It's amazing. Like, they should be out celebrating, but yet they're in my post trying to argue with it. My point, because, and so one person said, let's be real, Jimmy G ain't winning against this Seahawks defense. And my argument back, my clap back is, okay, but this Seahawks offense isn't beating our 2019 defense. Because what the argument is, you saw what that front did to the Patriots, and how they absolutely decimated Drake May and their offense, and it was just a defensive juggernaut was what we saw. All Seattle really had to do, yes, I know that the Patriots scored 14 points or 13 points. That one of those was with 2 minutes and 38 seconds left in the game. Okay. The Seahawks only had to score 9 points and they won that game,
Right.
because and that Seahawks offense had only scored 4 field goals within the first 3 quarters. It wasn't until the game like that they were just leaning on that Patriot offense or defense so long that they started to pull away there at the end, and started to become a blowout, because that Patriot defense, they're getting desperate. They're trying, everything. They've been on the field almost the entire game, and they just broke. Okay. So if I'm looking at the first 3 quarters of that game, and I'm saying you put the 2019 49ers defense on there, this is like a 6-3 game. Like, this game is nobody's scoring points hardly. And if it comes down to that, I'm going with Kyle Shanahan over Clint Kubiak. And we also forget that 2019 offense was very dynamic. When you had Deebo Samuel, that you have somebody who he could at that time break a game in one play. You had Emmanuel
Did many
Sanders,
times.
route runner. You had Raheem Mostert, who, with his speed from the running back, and that team was able to run the ball pretty well, really well. I mean, we got to remember they literally won the NFC Championship game with Jimmy G dropping back 9 times in the game, and they ran for 250 yards on the Packers. So, I think that 49ers defense is at least able to run the ball somewhat. And that's why I say that 2019 49ers team, even with Jimmy G, I think beats that Seattle team, because I think both defenses are absolutely suffocating. But that 49ers offense would probably score at least 2 field goals, because we also had our old pal Robbie Gould as the kicker, as field goal kicker. And so, yeah, I do believe that 2019 49ers team wins that, because the only way that they got scored on by the Chiefs was because they were choke holding our guys the entire time. And I mean, look, and our defense broke at the end of that game. So I sit here and go, okay, We can say that Lynch and Shanahan don't have what the Seahawks have now, but to act like they've never built what the Seahawks had or something as good as what the Seahawks have been this year, come on. The 2023 49ers, I mean, when you look at talent-wise, I'm not saying that performance-wise of the defense, but talent-wise, that defense had all the talent that I would put that 2023 49ers defense close up against this Seattle defense. That 2023 defense was really, really good. We forget how good Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner were that year together at linebacker. We forget that Charvarius Ward was all pro that year. We forget that Talanoa Hufanga was all pro that year. That Gibson had 4 interceptions as a safety that year. So, like, that team and that offense, that team was better than this Seahawks team. You look at our 2023 offense compared to this Seahawks offense, it's not even close. It's not even close. So,
Yeah.
like, people acting like the 49ers have never built anything like what the Seahawks did. The Seahawks, they are a good team and they get their flowers. And I understand that. And this is clapping back against everybody in those posts who've been saying I'm being ridiculous. Is that team they put together in 2023 wins in this year, because this is one of the weaker years of the NFL. We've been talking about this. This isn't just sitting here at the Super Bowl and saying, okay, well, they only won because it wasn't that hard. We were talking about this in December, that this seemed like one of the weakest years that anybody could take it, because there was no true elite team that was just dominant over everybody, that it felt like a year where anybody could win. The Rams went toe-to-toe with the Seahawks. We beat them the week after Nick Bosa tore his ACL. It's like this year came down to who was healthiest. The 3 teams that were healthiest at the end of the season were the Seahawks, the Rams, and the Patriots. They were the healthiest teams in the league, and that is why those were the top 3 teams at the end of the year. It just is. So, like this acting like we're 10 miles behind the Seahawks. I don't see that. I really don't. Like, yes, this Seahawks team peaked at the right time. Kenneth Walker had the best, I think, 3-game run of his career. Sam Darnold didn't turn the ball over for 3 games. I think the first time in his career. Like, they peaked at the right time. Their defense peaked at the right time. And so, like, I'm not looking at this and saying, well, there's no way. You go, look, you give the Seahawks the same injury situation that the 49ers did this year, and you give the 49ers the same health situation the Seahawks had this year, and you do that in 2026, then we're talking about how the Seahawks fell behind the 49ers in 2026. That's what we're talking about. So,
that answers the super chat. But thank you for the super chat. Because Cinnamon Kiss says, is it wrong to feel the Niners currently are so far behind the Hawks and wondering when we can ever compete? Like, that's literally your stance, was perfectly said. And we did, and Quiffleball chimed in and said, look, we made it to the second round of the playoffs. We're not too far away if you add in some health. Factually, we are not too far behind. Like, that is fact. You could say that with any NFL team. Let's go on the AFC side real quick, for example. So a team that made it to the second round is the Bills, right? So the Bills are not that far away from the Patriots. Like, that's just a fact.
Apparently, they believe they're a Sean McDermott away.
There you go. So the point is that, yes, it is wrong. I guess let's answer that question. It is wrong. There, done.
Well, no, I'm not necessarily going to say it is wrong. I will say, I understand. Like, you look at that Seattle defense has been so dominant down the stretch, especially when you look at how they played us in week 18, and then how they played us in the divisional round, and then how they played that Patriots team. I will say they're not impervious, though. If you go back and look at the NFC Championship game, it's kind of one where if you really just kind of 30,000 foot view look at at the game, you kind of wonder, how did the Rams not win that game? Because Kyron Williams is running for over 5 yards a carry. And that's the secret sauce against this defense. It's not actually that secret. And Kyle Shanahan talked about that. I've been talking about it since last year. Actually, well, not last year necessarily. 2024, when we lost to them then in 2024, I said the biggest problem, because it was the same arguments, was we didn't get enough in the passing game. Brock didn't do well and all this stuff. And I said if you can't run the ball against two high safeties, which Seattle loves to major in, you are going to have a really hard time scoring against that defense. I said it in 2024, 2025 came around, week 18 happened, and that was exactly what happened. McCaffrey had like 10 carries for 20 some yards, 30 yards. It was just a piddly offense, rushing production, and we got absolutely put in a chokehold. And then divisional round, same thing happens. You can't run against that front. You can't run on that defense, and you can't do anything. And then Shanahan's asked about it before the Super Bowl yesterday, and he said, if the big deal is you have to be able to run the ball on them, because if you can't run and they're sitting there in their two high safeties, it's going to be really hard to score any touchdowns on them. And that is just a fact. Like, that's not me saying, just me saying it. That is about anybody is saying that. So, when it comes to that Seattle defense, they can be so suffocating, because when teams can't run the ball on them, they are extremely tough to beat. But when you can run the ball, it's not like they're this defense that is never going to allow more than 20 points. When the Rams have played them, they've been able to run the ball, and they've been able to score some good points on that Seattle defense. You go and look at when the Buccaneers played them, they were able to run the ball, and they were able to put up a lot of points against that Seattle defense. And that suddenly, when you force them out of that too high shell, that they do everything. And when you can't allow them to major in that, and they have to start respecting the run and bring some extra reinforcements, that defense kind of starts falling apart. And suddenly their corners start getting exposed, because they don't have safeties over the top, and they can get beat downfield, and they can get beat on double moves. Like, they will start to have issues when you do that. And when that starts to happen, but you got to be able to do that and establish that. If you can't do that, it is a very long day against that team, that front. So, I don't think they're this isn't the 2000 Ravens defense. Like, let's just be real. Like, I know people are like, this was like the third best defense ever by DVOA and all this other stuff. Look, I can tell you, that was not the 2000 Ravens defense. That was not the 2002 Buccaneers defense. They are a very good defense, but they are not at that level. This is, they weren't just where, even if you can get some hits here and there, that you still just can't score points. It's once you can break them out of what they major in, they will allow a lot of points. They can. This isn't a team that just has a ceiling of you will not score more than 20 on them. There's like the Ravens defense from 2000. You were not going to score more than 17 points on that Ravens defense. Like, everybody knew it. That was the way the game was going to go. This Seattle defense isn't that. There is a pathway. It's not an easy one. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is a straightforward pathway. You do that, and then they suddenly aren't the behemoth that you're facing.
Let's get to another super chat. Cayman's Island was here early enough, so he did see when we gave away a Honda Civic. So congrats to him for winning that. He says, to your point, this was a down year. Next year, I feel like it won't be. What can the 49ers do right now outside of health to not only compete, but get a step ahead? I prioritize Kyle Pitts. What say you?
That's a good question. I know we've hammered the health part to death, and everything. I go back and forth with Kyle Pitts. I mean, dude is an athletic freak and could be a very dynamic weapon. You wonder about a guy who still hasn't quite put it all together from that position at this stage in his career. Is he going to have Sam Darnold kind of like I get into the right offensive system with the right offensive coaches around me, and suddenly I ascend and I become amazing and fully realize potential. Because of the potential that is still there, that is still not popped the surface. I think there's going to be a big market for him. I don't know. I also don't love the 49ers' last 6 years of tight end free agent signings. I don't love what they've done with their free agent. Luke Farrell has not been a good free agent signing at all. It was really just underwhelming. He was brought here to be a blocking tight end and wasn't very good in blocking. Uh, Eric Sauber, he went and he did okay with Seattle, but I really didn't like him when he was here with us. And Barner was much more of an impact player with Seattle than Eric Sauber was. I just haven't been thrilled with our tight end free agent class. So I don't know. I've been up and down. At one point I was like, yes, we need to go get Kyle Pitts. I've kind of backed off that a little bit now. I think I've really landed on, I think Alec Pierce is the guy that I would target in free agency. I think as a wide receiver, that he's going to be the biggest needle mover. I think that you can go get tight end in this draft. If Kenyon Sadiq is there at the end of the first round, I think you go get him. I don't think he's going to be there at the end of the first round, but what I would hate to see is the 49ers go and they spend big money getting Kyle Pitts. You're expecting to get George Kittle back. Kenyon Sadiq is sitting there at 27, and you say, well, we just signed Kyle Pitts, and then Kyle Pitts flames out. He's kind of is underwhelming like he's been. So, so that's kind of where I'm at on it. And I think I think this is a strong tight end class. Last year I came away from the Senior Bowl and I was really high on the kid from Oregon, Terrence Ferguson. And we talked about him on the show a bunch of times, right? And he had a really strong year there in LA. I think I felt like last year's tight end class was better than the year before. I felt like 2025 was better than 2024. And I feel like 2026 is going to be better than 2025. I think there's a number of solid, good tight ends coming out of this class that if you're going to address tight end, I think they'd be better off going into the draft in round 2, 3, 4. If Sadiq is there in round 1, yeah, you get him. But even if he's not, I think you can go get a number of good kids. People know I like Sam Rush, but outside of Sam Rush, there's still a number of other guys that are there. I think that that could really be good tight ends. I'm not gonna talk up the kid Suavis from Alabama because I am banned from ever pumping up any Alabama tight ends after the Cam Latu debacle.
I have put that ban. Yes, I have placed that.
I placed it on myself because I've had several people message me and say, "What do you think?" or talk to me and say, "What do you think about the kid from Alabama, the tight end?" And I'm like, I'm not. I was burned. I was too close to I flew too close to the sun.
Yes, your wings fell off.
and so that happened.
They melted.
But so I think the biggest thing that the 49ers can do to take a step ahead is you get dynamic playmakers on the offensive side. I think Alec Pierce becomes a guy that you add because he made. Did I lose? I lost connection for a second. That's weird.
We traded places.
What was the last thing you heard?
I think you said because and then that's literally so I don't know what you were
I think if we were going to target anything to move ahead to gain ground on the Seahawks, Alec Pierce makes sense because no matter what you do from there, like he doesn't change your plans. If you want to draft an X receiver number 1 or in the first round, you can still do that, even if you get Alec Pierce, because we could use a slot and a Z, and you can move Ricky. Ricky can play Z, he can play slot. I don't love him as an X, but he could slot in there. But if you're going to target that, like that doesn't keep you from doing that. Alec Pierce, it doesn't keep you from targeting a slot like a Ted Hurst kind of guy, or somebody in there that you want. If you want to spend an early round pick on a receiver, Alec Pierce isn't going to keep you from doing that. But he's another tool now that you have in there. You can now go get offensive lineman. If Jennings Dunker is sitting there at 27, you don't have to reach for a receiver because you have Alec Pierce. And so you can improve your offensive line. If there's a stud, if for some reason the Parker kid from Clemson is sitting there, you think about getting him as a defensive end, as a speed rusher on the edge, because you don't have to worry about, you have to invest that first on a receiver. I think that's why I target Alec Pierce, is because it allows you to go into the draft and you can say, we don't have to get this in the first round. We can get the most impact player and then build from there. You can truly go best player available, because there's going to be a kid there at 27 that has the opportunity to move you, at least within striking distance of the Seahawks. And then you need development from your 2024 and 2025 draft classes from that point. You need your safeties, Malik Mustafa, Marquise Siegel. They need to develop. They've got to take another step. Mustafa's going to get the first real offseason he's had. So this would be a huge year of growth for him if he takes this opportunity and says, I'm going to become that guy. Okay. The playmaking safety we've been hoping for. So make that happen. That you're able to get Alfred Collins. You can become a monster of a 3 technique. You've got to get your footwork down, your everything that they need for you, maybe even dropping a little bit of weight for what they want from a 3 technique, and you can become one of the best 3 techniques in the game. Go do that. CJ West, you now have an opportunity to become one of the more dominant nose tackles in the game. Go do it. You have this opportunity for this offseason. They need to make it happen. Renardo Green, you had a year where it was kind of, up and down. Now's your chance to say, I'm going to go make myself the same kind of contract that Diamador Lenore did. This is my year to make money, because you go year 3, you can go make a ton of money for yourself, because going into year 4, they're going to give you a contract extension. That's when this is going to be your contract year. So you do everything you can in this offseason to make yourself better. Same thing with D Winters. This is the year that the 49ers are going to decide, do they invest in you long term? Are you the guy that's going to take over for Fred Warner's spot? Or are you just passing through? And they're looking for a kid that's going to be your replacement. So all of those guys need to develop this year. They need to take another step, and they need to then show up and be a defense that we think they can be. If they do that, now you're looking at, okay, we have incremental improvements on the offensive line, some dynamic playmakers, and suddenly this is a 49ers team who already went 12-5 last year that is knocking on the Seahawks door. And it truly does come down to which team does stay healthy. I think that's where you say, okay, outside of health, now you're playing on a much even more even playing ground, and it's going to be more about who stays healthy at that point.
So I want to shift to something very, very important. As of from Thursday to Sunday, was fun to see the Bay Area kind of shine. So we had just Christian McCaffrey winning two major things: the salute to
Salute to
service,
service award.
and then which was really cool to see Ed be the one. I mean, that's got to be cool for anyone in here that is close with their father. It would be super cool on national TV for something that's that important and prestige wise, like, is a big deal. To get that award from your dad was really cool. Obviously he won comeback player, probably in a all out landslide. And then in the Super Bowl, to see Joe Montana, Steve Young, Jerry Rice out there. Jerry doing the coin flip, was over anxious on that coin flip. He was ready to grab that coin. Just to see all that was amazing, but none of that was outshined by number 33 on your program, number 1 in our hearts. Finally, I texted Johnny the other day, finally, Roger. Like this was it's it's bad when Rich Eisen, who is announcing it, like, even says something like, finally, he's waited, like,
Yeah.
that the NFL kind of screwed that one up when a guy announces it that way. But I am seriously thinking of I am not that far in Indiana, and I have never been to Canton in that situation. I've been to Canton and been to the Hall of Fame on a random Tuesday. I've never been when they're inducting, and so I've missed Montana, Rice, Young, whatever. I was a lot younger, obviously, but I think I may go. I mean, this is a chance to see a 49er get inducted. I truly do really respect all the other players, including Adam Vinatieri. I really do respect all the other guys that got in. I think they'll have great speeches. I think Larry Fitzgerald is one of the most respectable humans that has ever put on pads. And
Yeah.
so I really want to go, and I'm so excited for Roger Craig. I loved that you could see they all hug each other as they come out. But if you notice, Roger hugged a little different. He embraced a little bit like I need this hug. Like, like it was just really, really cool to see. Johnny, what did you think?
Well, I mean, with Roger Craig, I know there's still some animosity left over from the 1990 NFC Championship game, the fumble. Um, yeah, that was rough. But one play doesn't define a player's career and whether or not they should be in the Hall of Fame or not. I mean, sometimes it does. Uh, but you know, there's been receivers who've had big time drops. There's been quarterbacks who've had really bad timed interceptions, and it hasn't necessarily kept them away from Canton. When you look at, people who, for me, the biggest thing is players who were either the Hall of Fame should really come down to players that were either incredibly um, exceptional or incredibly game changing. Literally, not in that they changed an individual game, but they changed the pathway of the game. And this is I've made this argument several times that this is why I feel like there should be an assistant coaches slot for the Hall of Fame, or specifically a coach's slot so that they can put some assistants in there, because there are coaches that have changed the entire makeup of the game of football. You look at Dom Capers and what he started doing with zone blitzes that nobody did zone blitzes before him, and suddenly he figured out a way. And then you look at the defenses that everybody wants right now, what the Patriots are running, what the Seahawks are running, what Brian Flores has been doing is all based on a zone blitz idea. And how that came from Dom Capers, I go, Dom Capers changed the game of football forever, forever. What Roger Craig did changed the game of football forever. I mean, essentially, you had teams that couldn't get a running back to do what Roger Craig could do, who started to use slot receivers because it gave you the same kind of advantage. When you could get a third, twitchy, difficult to cover receiving guy on the field, that changed the game. When you have that and a running back there, because and Tom Rathman, it was the same thing. Like the 49ers were playing with more true eligible receivers that were threats between Tom Rathman and Roger Craig than any team was in the NFL. And so Roger Craig, what he did was say, he showed him and Bill Walsh said, here's how a player can be used completely differently than everybody else, and how it absolutely decimates defenses. And now defenses have to spend all offseason figuring out, how are we going to take this away? That there wasn't anything else that was saying, okay, this guy, we have to have a special plan for this player. You didn't necessarily have that. You had like times of, okay, we've got to stop the run. We've got to stop outside runs. We've got to stop inside runs. You had great running backs and they were really hard to stop, but a lot of the plans were similar. It wasn't like every time it was going to be, okay, well, this guy, we've got to do only this, or we've got to have a special plan for this. It was everybody's running a lot of the same stuff. And these guys are really good at that. And so these three teams were going to use a similar plan. When it came to Roger Craig, you had to have a very specific Roger Craig plan. It was, I mean, for those of us who maybe were really young when that was happening, Think back to what we saw with Marshall Faulk. The way that teams that you had to see your defense play against the Rams was different than everybody else because of Marshall Faulk. And that's why Marshall Faulk went into the Hall of Fame. Roger Craig was Marshall Faulk 1.0, right? It was the beta test. Like, he was the first version of that. Christian McCaffrey is the next version of that, which is a player that every team who plays the 49ers, you play them differently because of what Christian McCaffrey brings. Same thing with Saquon Barkley. These are kind of those players who can be such dynamic, multi-faceted weapons that you have to have a special plan just for them. And Roger was that kind of guy. And that's why I think what he was able to do changed the game of football fundamentally. And that, for that reason alone, he should be in the Hall of Fame, because the game of football today does not look like what it did in 1982 because of a large part because of Roger Craig and what was able to happen from that. Mike Martz didn't suddenly say, I have Marshall Faulk, and so now I'm going to change the way I've done everything. He actually said, what did Bill Walsh do with Roger Craig? And I can do that with Marshall Faulk, and now add it to this Air Coryell offense, and it becomes one of the most dynamic passing attacks that the NFL has ever seen. And so, yes, Roger has deserved to be in the Hall of Fame for that. They got hung up too much because they said, well, he was never the best player in the league in any one year. And I go, I don't care about that as much, because he was still a special player in the league that changed the trajectory of the way the game of football was played. Vernon Davis was not the best tight end at any single year that he played, but he brought speed to the tight end position that nobody had seen before, and he changed the way that they viewed it. Now, he didn't do it in the same way that Roger did with running backs, but Vernon Davis was a phenomenal tight end, and he changed some of the things in the way that football is played. We don't see many players like that. When you see it and it happens, you have to recognize that it was special at the time. And that's what it was with Roger. You didn't see a lot of guys who could do that. And I think that's why Roger, it's been too long coming to see Roger Craig get into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it was just really, really cool to see. It was weird seeing the fallout of the 49ers and Charles Haley, to then turn around and have Charles Haley be one of the guys that, you know, they released those videos of, I thought Morton Anderson going to Adam Vinatieri's was cool, you know, where they show the guy at their house, receiving the, welcome to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But that was good. It was special, all of it. It means a lot more, I'm sure, the fact that it was so long, like he can, while he's alive and still has his, wits about him. That's what you want. That's what I kind of feel bad a little tiny bit. 1% feel bad for Robert Kraft. He may get in when he doesn't even know what's happening.
That's a little dark.
We'll see. Well, the dude's in his 80s, man. I mean, come on. I'm just saying, like, Robert Kraft,
put that juju out there.
I'm just saying, say what you want. He does deserve at some point soon to get into the Hall of Fame, and they snubbed him. I get it. That's a different show, but yeah, very cool. Like I said, I'll keep you guys posted, because I really would like to go. I got to look up some information on stuff. I think my parents would like to go probably too. All right, so I was thinking we end with a few Super Bowl commercials, maybe, that
I sent you a private chat.
Oh, well, then. Oh, you have another. I did not.
I have another that I want to get off my chest, Adam.
Another
want to get off my
clapping.
Yes. We have one final Johnny claps back segment because I really want to get this off my chest. So I put out another post. It was last night, because the thing you were seeing all over was people are like, see what can happen with a dominant front. You got to have a dominant front. People are acting like this has been some sort of like Illuminati is real sort of revelation. that if you have a dominant front four and you can play coverage behind it, that this is like some sort of secret sauce. What kind of cracks me up is seeing 49ers fans who 2 weeks ago, when we were looking at defensive coordinators, sat there and were like talking about how Kyle Shanahan needed to quit being stubborn and get away from this, only rush 4 scheme. It's outdated. We can't do it. Knock it off. We need to bring in somebody who's more aggressive. That's all my feed was for like 2 weeks as we're looking for a defensive coordinator. The Seahawks go into the Super Bowl and they beat us with it. They beat the Patriots by rushing 4, playing coverage, and everybody is suddenly like, see, this is the secret sauce. I'm like, wait a minute. Aren't you the same people who 2 weeks ago were sitting here saying that Kyle Shanahan shouldn't be stuck on using that as an approach because that's outdated or whatever? Okay, look. A dominant front four who can win has been the secret sauce to winning the Super Bowl for decades. Decades. And people are acting like this is some sort of revelation. I'm like, did you not watch the 2008 Super Bowl? That was the one that maybe the best offensive team that had ever been assembled in the 2008 Patriots, and they got beat by the Giants because the Giants had 4 defensive ends who could rush the passer, and they absolutely suffocated Tom Brady the entire game. I mean, you go back to the Buccaneers, the 2002 Buccaneers. They sat there and they played Tampa 2 almost the entire time, and they got home because they had Simeon Rice on the edge, and they had Warren Sapp coming up the middle, and they could absolutely terrify quarterbacks because they could sit there and play too high coverage and rush the passer with only 4. You go back to the 49ers old days. They used to get home with Fred Dean, and they had all their guys who could rush the passer. And they were great at it. And they could play coverage on the back end, and it really helps you. Go back to the Legion of Boom. They sat there. They rushed 4 all the time, and they played coverage, and they absolutely decimated another one of the most amazing offenses that had ever happened in the Broncos when they faced them in the Super Bowl in 2013. This has been the secret sauce for a long time. And so somebody commented and they said, someone tell Kyle and Lynch because they lost. Really? What are we doing here? You don't think they understand this? What did they do last year? They spent their number 11 overall pick on a defensive lineman. What did they do in the second round? They went and got another defensive lineman. They spent 2 trades on defensive linemen. They traded for Bryce Huff and they traded for Keon White. They made 4 moves with draft capital to go get defensive linemen, 2 trades, and their first 2 picks in the draft. They have Nick Bosa, who when they signed him to an extension was the most expensive defensive player in the league. And you're going to tell me that they suddenly didn't have or have not realized that a great defensive front wins games? What do you really? They've invested more into defensive line than I think any other position. They've invested 3 first-round picks, 4 first-round picks in defensive line. Like that's the thing we always talk about. Like, what defensive lineman are you going to pick in round 1? Because that's what they do. Because they understand that. They do understand that. Now you can argue about whether they pick the right guy or not. People trying to already get the verdict on Michael Williams right now is just a little ridiculous. The kid was playing very well for what we know. He wasn't getting the sacks. The pressures were there. The double teams were there because of the role we were asking him to play, and he was incredible against the run. Those things set you up to earn your way to the passer. If you go back to the first 3 weeks of this season, our defensive front was getting after quarterbacks all the time because they understand that it really does help to have 4 guys who can win. And they did a lot to do that. They got one of the best speed rushes that's there. Now, he's only a one-trick pony. You don't dare use him in anything other than a speed rush role. But they've understood that is what it takes. And I would be very surprised with the buzz that is coming out about Max Crosby if the 49ers are actually not really going after Max Crosby. We also forget that when Khalil Mack was traded to the Bears, the 49ers, John Lynch, offered a better trade package than what the Bears offered. The difference was Al Davis was still around and he didn't want to make that trade. The difference now is that you have more of an ownership group, and Tom Brady is a very loud voice in that group. And if Max Crosby doesn't want to be there and the 49ers make the best offer, Tom's going to sit in the room and say, don't you dare turn down a better offer just because you don't like the 49ers. That's
Tom
not
Brady
happening anymore.
He loves the 49ers.
Right. So like I would be very surprised if they don't go hard after him, because if you look at a third down rushing package of Nick Bosa, Michael Williams, Alfred Collins, and Max Crosby, my goodness. Now we're not talking about the 49ers front being behind the Seahawks. And you can extend both Bosa's and Max Crosby's careers because they now get to rotate more on base downs because you have Michael who there. And you can rotate those three guys on base downs, and they're going to be very fresh. I mean, imagine what you could do having just those three guys of Michael, Nick Bosa, and Max Crosby. You can move them all around. You could put any guy anywhere, the stunts you can run, putting Max over the center and Bosa over the tackle. And what are they going to do when you start running games? And when Nick Bosa can blow up an entire side of the line and Max Crosby's coming around on a stunt, or you have a guard who's trying to cover Crosby in one-on-one, or Bosa one-on-one, or Michael is able to crash down and we use those long arms and he's going to tie guys up. You'd have no idea what's coming after you. That, to me, if I'm the 49ers, I'm saying, okay, I like this year's draft class, but I'm okay with sending a first round pick for one Max Crosby.
Yeah. He's not staying. He was on.
He's not. He is not
on Friday,
and he's at the point in his career where he's not wanting to sit through a 3-year rebuild. He's not. And I guarantee you, he understands that where San Francisco is and what could happen if you pair him and Bosa and Michael together. I think he understands what can happen.
Dude.
And we'll send him Ayuk, and we'll say, we have rights to a receiver who was second team All-Pro.
Yeah, and we know that he can drive there fast. I mean, he can get to Vegas probably.
Yeah, he can probably do it in like an hour and 20 minutes.
Yeah, under 5 hours with the way he drives so fast. That's a good thing. It's positive. That won't work out like Henry Ruggs at all. So,
another dark comment. Adam is getting dark today.
Dark mood when I see sea chickens on my field and Fred Warner. Like you can see.
I have to have another clap back here. I have another clap back. So Cayman's Island. He says no one will come because of the substation. Okay, so I saw Kendrick Bourne was there. Everybody's talking about the stinking substation. Okay, Kendrick Bourne is there. Look, I'm pretty down the line on this. I'm like, look, I don't know. There's a lot of things on both sides. Anybody who's saying it's absolutely not or it absolutely is, I think you're overreaching on that. Because there is something that does make you kind of go, when you say they tripled the size of the substation when they built Levi's. And we know since they've built Levi's that the team has been one of the top 10 most injured teams every year, except for 2023. Like, we've been joking. We were joking about it for like half a decade of did they build Levi's over an old Indian burial ground? Because it seemed like since Levi's was built, the 49ers have been cursed with injuries. So when you have that and that coincides with them tripling the size of the substation, they practice right there. Like I get the argument that Jed York saying, well, we were here since 1987. Okay. Yeah. But the substation was tripled the size. Okay. But there are situations that people have where they stop using common sense and they start looking for validation on certain things. Like Kendrick Bourne came out and he's like, we've wondered because, you look over by the substation, all the grass is brown over there. And on the other side of the street, the soccer field, all their grass is green. Okay. One of the reasons why is because generally around a substation that size, they don't run irrigation lines around it because the last thing you want is to turn an entire irrigation. Remember, water conducts electricity. So you don't want to accidentally turn your entire irrigation system into a high-powered electrical conduit. Okay. So that is why that grass is brown over there. There is probably no irrigation over around that substation. this is one of the things that I've seen, like that people have been sharing this comment that Kendrick Bourne had, that the grass is brown around the substation, therefore you can see it's killing life. I'm like, no, it's actually most likely sunbaked. That's why the grass is brown over there. If it was killing the grass, there would be no grass there. That's what would happen. So this is most likely drought stressed grass because they don't have an irrigation system there. And I'm not saying conducts electricity, but water, like electricity travels through water. And I used to install irrigation lines, and what we always had to do is you had to be very careful about, because they have springs in them, and sometimes those springs wear out and they can get stuck up. And one of the codes in Washington State, at least where I was from, was that you couldn't have those within a certain distance of electrical lines because of the potential of the springs getting carrying electricity on it. It was an electrical code thing that we did. And so like we did irrigation around new construction a lot of times, and they would always cordon off that in Washington State you weren't allowed to put irrigation lines around high tension substations like that. Like they just didn't do it. That's why a lot of times you see it's gravel or it's other things that are around that don't require any sort of irrigation, that are different ways of controlling erosion, because you don't want to have any of that watering around those lines. And I get it that there's rain and all that, but I'm just saying, like that's something that I've seen on there that just, I go, I don't think that's the reason, but that's just me.
We digress. That's what we like to do. Yeah, it's just frustrating. I'm excited to see if we can stay healthy with some new players like a Max Crosby. I know he's not staying in Vegas after the interview with Colin Cowherd. That was crazy, just how formal he had to be, and just like, yes, I am a member of the Las Vegas Raiders. That is the organization that I am with. Like he was so like, that's just, you just know he's not going to stay there. So he's rehabbing, and that would be crazy to have Bosa and Crosby. All right, so we will try and hang out with you guys again later in the week. Make sure that you hit the notification bell, because you, especially in the off season, we may go at different times. Sometimes breaking news will happen. Johnny will text me, "Hey, can you go live tonight?"
Yeah.
We may do that. This is the time. Make sure, if you have not hit the notification bell, make sure that you take your phone and show it to Niner fans and say, "Hey, there's this cool channel." Um, and
Yeah, and I'm trying to get a show together with one Wayne Breezy. He was supposed to be on this morning, but ended up having to work. So we may have a show on Friday that works around Wayne's work schedule. So
yep,
we'd love to
cool.
have Wayne on the show. He's good energy to have. We haven't
Energy,
had him
yeah,
on in a
energy,
while.
energy. I'm glad
So
you said that. Always
yeah,
great energy
yeah. So
with Wayne Brazy. He is turned. He's
combine.
always turned.
I'm not going to the combine. I am tripped out right now. So won't be going to the combine. Plus, I'm not as big of a fan of watching players running around in shorts, and like for me, I don't get a lot of like, oh, great thing to see for a guy running their 40. I can look up their 40. What I love about the Senior Bowl is that you're there and you can see the 11 on 11s. You can see
Compete.
the
They're
players
competing.
competing, pads on, hitting, running plays. Those are the things that really excite me. That's why I prioritize the Senior Bowl much more over the combine. So, I mean, we'll talk about what goes on with the combine, but that's the last thing. The bigger thing to me is going to be free agency. We're rolling towards it. We got about a month, and free agency is going to open, and it's going to be a wild ride. I think there's going to be much consternation, much weeping and crying. But
Gnashing of
there
teeth.
may be some celebration, and there's going to be a lot of, they shouldn't have done that. But yeah,
And we'll be here to talk about it. So,
all of it.
but in the meantime and in between time, stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, go Niners.